The twin suns of Xerion rose slowly over the crystal towers of the royal palace. Morning light filled the great hall where courtiers in shining armor and flowing robes gathered in whispers. Their voices carried doubt, laughter, and even anger. For today their princess had made a choice that shook the empire. Princess Elira, daughter of Queen Serelith, had married not a noble warrior nor a high scholar, but a man they all believed to be a commoner. He was human, a stranger from a distant world who walked with calm steps and spoke with quiet words. His name was Ethan. He stood beside the princess in simple clothes, not decorated robes or shining armor. His brown hair was cut short, his hands rough from work. To the court he looked like a farmer who had lost his way into the palace. "Is this truly the man you wed, princess?" a noble woman whispered to her neighbor, covering her mouth with a jeweled hand. "Yes," another replied. "Look at him. No crown, no weapon, no heritage. He is nothing." The generals of the Xerion Guard frowned as they stared at Ethan. One of them, General Vanar, spoke loudly so all could hear. "Princess, you are the jewel of our people. You could have chosen a warrior who has slain beasts on the battlefield. You could have chosen a prince from another star kingdom to strengthen alliances. But this man? He is no warrior. He is no prince. He is a shadow among giants." The hall filled with laughter, but Elira raised her hand and the sound stopped. Her eyes, bright silver like the moon's, narrowed as she looked across the court. "You mock what you do not understand," she said with steady voice. "You see only his clothes and his silence, but you do not see his heart. I have chosen Ethan not for your approval, but for his courage, his kindness, and his truth." The queen watched silently from her throne, her expression unreadable. She had not stopped the marriage, but she had not blessed it either. For now she measured both her daughter's strength and the man's silence. Ethan did not speak. He stood tall but not proud, calm but not weak. He let their words fall like rain against stone. He knew their doubts, but he carried no anger. In his heart he wished for a quiet life with Elira, far from war and judgment. Days turned into weeks and whispers continued. Yet Ethan showed no care for the court's laughter. He spent his mornings in the palace gardens repairing tools with steady hands. He worked with the farmers outside the city walls, learning their ways and teaching them simple earth methods to grow crops faster. He fixed broken water channels with clever designs. He built storage that kept grain safe from the hungry night birds that often stole food. Slowly, the common people began to respect him, though the nobles still looked down on him. Princess Elira often watched him as he worked. She saw the way he treated everyone the same, servant, guard, or child. He never raised his voice, never sought praise, but always offered help. When others struggled, he simply rolled up his sleeves and joined in. One evening, Elira walked beside him as they returned from the fields. Her long silver cloak shimmered in the dusk light while Ethan carried a basket of fruits on his shoulder. "Do their words trouble you?" she asked softly. "No," Ethan replied. "Words are only sounds. I care for what is true. I care for you and for the people who must eat and live." "Let them laugh. Let them doubt. It changes nothing." Elira smiled faintly, but in her heart she still wondered. Who was Ethan truly? A man of peace, yes. A man of wisdom, perhaps. But sometimes, when she looked into his eyes, she saw shadows of battles past, scars not on his body but on his soul. Her question grew sharper when rumors began to spread across the empire. Messengers arrived breathless, their armor scorched by travel. They spoke of a warlord from the outer reach, a conqueror named Draxel who gathered armies of machines and mercenaries. World after world had fallen before him, and now his fleet turned toward Xerion. In the palace, the council of generals gathered with the queen. Maps were unrolled, defenses discussed, and orders shouted. Elira sat with them, determined to protect her people. Ethan, however, was told to remain outside the chamber. "This is no place for you," General Vanar said sharply. "War is decided by soldiers, not by farmers." "I am her husband," Ethan replied calmly. "I stand by her side." "Not here," the general snapped. "This is the Council of War. We will not waste our time with a commoner's voice." Elira wanted to protest, but Ethan placed a hand gently on her arm and shook his head. His eyes told her not to worry. With quiet steps, he turned and left the hall. That night, he sat alone in the gardens under the twin moons. His thoughts were heavy, though his face remained calm. He had promised himself he would never return to war, never again hold the blade that had once defined him. But war was coming, whether he wished it or not. The next day, the city prepared. Armies marched, ships were fueled, weapons polished. The people looked to the palace for hope. But in the streets, many whispered doubts. Could the generals win? Would their walls hold against the warlords' machines? Among the whispers was another rumor, softer but spreading quickly. What of the princess's husband? He does not fight. He does not command. He plants and builds. What use is he to us? Ethan heard the whispers as he carried water to the workers. He heard them as he repaired a broken wheel on a supply cart. But he never replied. His silence became his shield. On the eve of battle, the council gathered again. Illyra stood firm, but even she could see the worry in the general's eyes. The warlord's fleet was larger than they expected. His weapons stronger, their defenses weaker. At last the queen rose from her throne and spoke with a voice of steel. "We will fight," she said, "but we must be ready to pay the price." The court fell silent. Illyra's hands clenched at her side. She thought of her people, her city, her future. She thought of Ethan standing outside in the gardens. The sound of drums echoed across the palace walls. War had come to Zarion, and Ethan, the man they all believed to be only a commoner, waited in silence. He had not yet revealed the truth of who he was. He had not yet drawn the blade that slept hidden in the shadows of his chamber. But soon, very soon, the world would know. The city of Zarion stirred with unease. Smoke rose in the distance from villages already touched by the warlord's scouts. People gathered in marketplaces with fear in their eyes, whispering of coming doom. Soldiers sharpened their spears, tested the charge of plasma rifles, and checked their armor. Children clung to their mothers while elders prayed to the twin sons for deliverance. Inside the palace, the Council of Generals argued. They spoke of walls and fleets, of tactics and supply lines. But behind their strong words lay doubt. None of them had faced an enemy as ruthless as Warlord Draxel. His machines were tireless, his mercenaries merciless, and his fleet moved with precision. Princess Illyra sat among them, her voice steady, but her heart heavy. She offered ideas of defense, but many generals ignored her. They still saw her as a young woman who had married unwisely. She bit her tongue, though fire burned inside her. Outside the chamber, Ethan worked quietly. He had been told once again he was not welcome in the Council of War. Yet he listened from the shadows when guards shifted, and his mind traced every word he heard. The general spoke of positioning troops at the valley gates. They planned to hold the outer wall as long as possible before falling back to the city. Ethan knew their plan would fail. He saw the weak points they ignored. He knew the warlord would exploit them. That evening, as the sun set and the palace torches were lit, Illyra found Ethan in the gardens. He was kneeling by the water channel, adjusting a broken stone so water could flow smoothly. His hands were wet, his simple shirt stained with soil. "You heard their plans," Illyra said quietly. Ethan did not look up. "I did, and?" He placed the stone firmly in place and stood, wiping his hands. "Their defense will break. The valley gates cannot hold. They believe numbers will save them, but numbers mean little if you fight without thought." Illyra stared at him. "You speak with certainty as if you have seen battles like this before." For a long moment, Ethan was silent. Then he turned his gaze toward the sky, where stars began to shine. His eyes reflected memories she could not see. "I have," he said at last. Illyra's breath caught. She wanted to ask more, but footsteps interrupted. A messenger rushed into the garden, his armor dented, his cloak torn. He bowed quickly. "Assassins," he gasped. "They have slipped into the city. We believe they seek the princess." Before Illyra could speak, Ethan was already moving. His hand grabbed the messenger's arm. "Where?" "In the west wing," the soldier answered. Without hesitation, Ethan took Illyra by the hand and led her swiftly through the palace corridors. Guards were running, shouts echoed, and shadows flickered. Suddenly, a dark figure leaped from behind a column, blade flashing toward Illyra. Before the princess could cry out, Ethan moved faster than her eyes could follow. His hand caught the assassin's wrist in midair. With a twist, he disarmed the attacker, sending the blade clattering to the floor. The assassin struck again with his other hand, but Ethan blocked, stepped in, and drove his elbow into the man's chest. The attacker fell gasping, unable to rise. Another figure appeared, then another. Ethan pushed Illyra back behind him. His movements were calm, precise, almost like a dance. He struck one assassin's knee, dodged another's blade, and used the attacker's momentum to throw him against a wall. Within moments, the attackers were on the ground, groaning and defeated. The guards finally arrived, swords drawn, but their eyes went wide at the sight. 3 assassins lay at Ethan's feet, and the human stood unharmed, breathing steady, his posture unshaken. "Take them," Ethan said simply. The guards obeyed quickly, dragging the assassins away. Whispers followed them. "Did you see that?" one murmured. "The commoner fought like a trained master." "That was no farmer," another whispered back. When the hall was quiet again, Elira stared at Ethan. Her voice trembled not from fear but from shock. "You moved like a soldier." "No, like a commander." "Who are you truly?" Ethan lowered his gaze. "Later," he said softly. "Not here." That night, when the palace was quiet and the stars high, Elira entered their chamber. She found Ethan sitting by the window, a cloth in his hands. He was polishing something long and wrapped. She stepped closer and froze. The cloth fell away and the object shone faintly in the moonlight. It was a sword. Its blade was slender, its surface etched with glowing blue lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. The hilt was worn yet elegant, forged with strange alloy unfamiliar to her eyes. "That is no common blade," Elira whispered. Ethan nodded slowly. "No, it is not." She sat across from him. "Tell me the truth." He looked at the sword, his reflection faint on its surface. For years he had kept it hidden, buried in silence. But the moment could no longer be delayed. "I was once a commander," Ethan said. His voice carried both weight and sorrow. "On Earth I led men and women in the human Zeroth wars. We fought not only for our world, but for others who could not defend themselves. This sword was given to me after the final battle. It was forged from alien alloy, bonded with human science. It became a symbol of peace. But peace came at a cost. Too many lives were lost. Too much blood was spilled. When the war ended, I swore never to fight again." Elira listened, her silver eyes wide. She had heard of the human Zeroth wars, though only in stories. They were tales of brutal battles of humans who stood against overwhelming foes and somehow endured. To think her husband had been one of them shook her heart. "Why hide it from me?" she asked softly. "Because I wanted to leave it behind," Ethan said. "I wanted no more war. I wished for a quiet life far from blood and steel. When I met you, I thought I had found that peace." Elira reached out and touched the sword gently. The blade hummed at her touch as if alive. "And yet war has found you again." "Yes," Ethan said, his jaw tight. "It always does." Silence filled the room, broken only by the faint pulse of the glowing lines on the sword. At that moment, a horn sounded in the distance. Alarms rang through the city. A guard's voice shouted in the courtyard. "The enemy fleet has entered orbit. They are here." Elira rose quickly, her cloak flowing around her. She looked at Ethan, her heart torn between fear and pride. "The council will call us to prepare, but they will not listen to you." Ethan wrapped the sword once more and stood. His eyes were steady, though shadowed by memories. "Then let them laugh. Let them doubt. But when the gates fall, they will see the truth." Together, they walked to the palace hall. Outside, soldiers rushed to their posts. Ships roared into the skies. The people of Zerion prayed in fear. The warlord had come, and the first strike of battle loomed. And though Ethan still hid much of his past, the glimpse of his skill had already planted whispers among the people. The commoner was not common. He was something far more. The night sky above Zerion was no longer peaceful. Fire streaked across the heavens as the enemy fleet entered orbit. The people of the capital city looked up in fear, clutching their children close. Alarms rang through the streets and soldiers rushed toward the walls. The invasion had begun. Inside the palace, the Council of Generals stood over maps glowing with holograms of ships and fortresses. Their voices clashed like steel as they argued over strategy. Princess Elira stood among them, her silver eyes bright with determination. "The enemy is already here," she said firmly. "We must act together or we will fall." General Vaynar slammed his fist on the table. "We have no need for advice from a princess who wed a farmer. Leave this to soldiers." Elira's hands clenched, but before she could reply, a messenger burst into the hall. His armor was dented, his breath heavy. "The outer villages have fallen. The warlord's machines are advancing faster than expected. They will reach the valley gates by dawn." The hall fell into silence. Queen Sarilith rose from her throne. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of command. "Prepare the armies. Send word to every outpost. Zerion will not fall without a fight." The generals bowed and hurried to give orders. Elira turned to leave, but as she stepped outside, she saw Ethan waiting in the shadows of the corridor. He had heard everything. "They will not hold the gates," Ethan said quietly. "You are certain?" Elira asked. "Yes," he replied. "Their numbers are too great and their weapons too strong. The generals fight with honor, but honor alone will not stop the machines." Elira studied him. "Then what can?" Ethan looked away, his jaw tight. "Tactics they do not expect. Weapons they do not understand. But to use them I would have to become what I swore never to be again." She placed a hand on his arm. "If you do nothing, our people will die." "I will die. Sometimes peace must be defended before it can live." His eyes met hers, and in that moment the walls he had built inside himself began to break. He gave a single nod. "Then I will fight." That night in their chamber, Ethan unwrapped the sword fully. Elira watched as he strapped the blade to his side. The runes on its surface glowed brighter than before, as if sensing his decision. "Do not fear this," Ethan said softly. "It was not made for destruction alone. It was forged to remind both sides, human and alien, that unity could exist. But tonight it must be used again." Before dawn, the army gathered at the valley gates. Soldiers lined the walls with plasma rifles. Archers prepared energy bows, and great war machines stood ready. The people of the city crowded behind, praying for victory. Ethan walked among them quietly, wearing only light armor borrowed from the guards. Many soldiers sneered when they saw him. "Why is the princess's farmer here?" one muttered. "Go back to your fields," another said. But others remembered the rumors, the whispers of assassins defeated, of movements too sharp and too precise for a simple man. They watched him with cautious eyes. Princess Elira walked beside him, her head held high. She ignored the stares and whispers, showing the people she trusted him fully. The horns sounded. The ground trembled. Across the valley, the warlord's army appeared. Waves of towering machines marched in perfect rhythm, their eyes glowing red. Behind them came armored beasts carrying mercenaries armed with heavy weapons, the air filled with the roar of engines and the metallic thrum of war. General Vaynar raised his blade and shouted, "Hold the gates. Zarian will stand." The armies clashed. The sky burned with plasma fire. Explosions shook the earth. The gates shuddered under the force of the enemy assault. In the chaos, Ethan moved forward. His eyes scanned the battlefield, marking every weakness, every movement. He saw how the enemy's machines advanced in patterns, predictable and precise. He saw where their armor left gaps, where their rhythm could be broken. At the heart of the battle, a massive war beast smashed through the front line. Soldiers scattered, their weapons useless against its armor. Panic spread. Ethan stepped forward. The crowd shouted at him to stop, to turn back, but he ignored them. Slowly he drew the sword. For the first time, the people of Zirion saw the blade in the open. Its runes flared with light, glowing brighter with every breath. The air around it shimmered. The noise of battle seemed to pause for a heartbeat. Soldiers turned, their eyes wide. "What is that?" one whispered. "The farmer. He carries a weapon of power," another said. Ethan lifted the blade, and with calm precision he struck. A single arc of energy cut through the war beast's armor. The creature roared and collapsed, its body smoking. The people gasped. The warlord's army hesitated, their perfect rhythm broken. The soldiers of Zarion stared in awe. The man they had mocked as a commoner stood tall, his sword glowing like fire in the night. Princess Elira's voice rang out clear and strong. "This is no commoner. This is my husband. Stand with him and we will not fall." The soldiers roared with new courage. They rallied around Ethan, following his movements, copying his tactics. He directed them to strike not at the machine's armor but at their joints. He taught them to break the enemy's rhythm, to scatter their formations. Everywhere he moved, the tide shifted. His sword cleaved through metal and shield alike, not by brute strength but by precision. He fought not as a farmer, nor even as a simple soldier, but as a commander who understood war in his very bones. General Vaynar watched, his mouth open in shock. At last he understood why the princess had chosen this man. The battle raged until dawn. The warlord's first wave was broken, their machines shattered, their mercenaries driven back. Smoke and fire filled the valley, but Zarian still stood. As the sun rose, the people cheered. They chanted Ethan's name, their voices echoing through the city walls. No longer did they call him commoner. No longer did they laugh. They saw him now for what he was, yet Ethan did not smile. He stood among the ruins, sword in hand, his eyes heavy with memory. For while the battle was won, he knew the war was far from over. That night in the palace, the council gathered again. The generals bowed their heads before Ethan. Even General Vaynar spoke with respect. "You saved us," he said. "You saw what we could not. You are no farmer. Tell us, who are you truly?" Ethan looked at them all, then slowly sheathed his sword. His voice was calm, but carried the weight of truth. "I am human," he said, "and humans have faced wars greater than this. We do not win with strength alone. We win because we endure, because we find ways no enemy expects. I wished only for peace, but now that war has come, I will fight for Zirion as I once fought for Earth." Aelira stood beside him, her hand resting on his arm. Her eyes shone with pride. "You are my husband, and you are the protector of this world." The queen rose from her throne, her gaze sharp but approving. "Then let it be known. Ethan of Earth, bearer of the blade, will stand as commander beside our armies. Together we will face the warlord and end his shadow over our people." The council bowed. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the blade at his side. He had sworn never to return to war, yet here he was again. But this time he was not alone. He had Aelira. He had a people who believed in him, and he had a world worth defending. Outside, the fires of the valley still smoked, and in the distance the warlord's fleet loomed. The true battle was yet to come, but now Zirion had hope, and that hope burned brightest in the hand of the human who had drawn his sword. The city of Zirion awoke to a new day, but the morning was heavy with smoke and tension. The first wave of the warlord's forces had been repelled, yet the enemy remained at the gates. The people whispered of the man who had drawn his sword, the human who moved with skill and precision beyond any alien warrior. Ethan, who had been dismissed as a commoner, was now a symbol of hope. Princess Aelira stood on the city walls beside him. Her silver cloak fluttered in the wind as she scanned the horizon. "They will attack again," she said quietly. Ethan nodded. "And we will be ready, but we must change how we fight. They expect walls and swords, but they do not expect strategy." The generals gathered around, their pride still wounded by the human's sudden authority. General Vaynar stepped forward, his voice tight. "Explain then. How does a commoner propose to command the Zarian army?" Ethan's calm eyes met Vaynar's. "I am no commoner in skill, only in name. Listen to me and follow my plan. We will use our knowledge of the land, the strengths of our soldiers and weapons in ways the enemy cannot anticipate. We fight with intelligence, not only force." The generals exchanged doubtful glances, but Aelira's voice cut through. "He has already proven himself. He saved the city once. If you will not follow, I will command the soldiers myself. Trust him or step aside." Reluctantly, the generals nodded. The army formed under Ethan's direction, moving with purpose and precision. He divided the soldiers into units, each with a specific task. Some were to hold the main gate, others to use the hidden valleys to flank the enemy. Scouts were sent to report the warlord's movements, and archers were stationed in the high towers ready to fire on command. Ethan walked among them, his presence steadying the nervous troops. "Do not fear their size or strength," he said. "Fear comes from doubt. Focus on your training, your skills, and your courage. Together we are stronger than any army of machines." The soldiers listened. His words carried not arrogance but clarity. Slowly, the fear that had gripped them began to fade. Even the generals could not deny the confidence he inspired. As the sun reached its peak, the enemy advanced once more. Machines rolled forward, their heavy limbs shaking the earth. Soldiers cried out in fear, but Ethan stood tall at the front, sword at his side. He had studied the enemy's patterns and knew where their weaknesses lay. "Hold your lines," he shouted. "Wait for my signal." The first wave of the enemy struck with force, but Ethan had prepared traps. Hidden pits, energy nets, and concealed barricades slowed the machines. The soldiers of Zarion struck with precision, targeting joints and weak points. The warlord's mercenaries faltered, unprepared for the clever tactics of the human commander. Ethan moved like a shadow across the battlefield, his sword flashing as he struck with exact timing. He did not fight recklessly. Every movement was calculated, every strike purposeful. Soldiers followed his example, their fear replaced by confidence. Princess Aelira watched in awe. The man she had married, the one the court had mocked, was leading her people with skill and courage that matched any hero of legend. Hours passed. The battle was intense. Machines fell, soldiers fought bravely, and the enemy's advance slowed. Ethan adjusted strategies on the fly, moving units where they were needed most. His knowledge of terrain and tactics proved unmatched. Even General Vaynar began to understand the truth. "He is not just a fighter," the general muttered. "He is a commander of strategy. We underestimated him." Ethan called his units together for a final maneuver. "The enemy expects us to hold the walls," he said. "They will focus their strongest forces there. We will strike from the sides and behind. Their formation will collapse if we move quickly." The soldiers obeyed without hesitation. Archers fired from hidden towers, soldiers ambushed from valleys, and Ethan led the central force to attack the warlord's machines directly. The enemy's rhythm was broken. Confusion spread among their ranks. Machines collided, mercenaries stumbled, and chaos reigned in their lines. The people of Zerion cheered as they watched their army gain the upper hand. For the first time they saw the warlord's forces falter. Hope returned to their hearts, and they rallied to defend their homes with renewed courage. Ethan pressed forward, facing one of the larger war machines. It towered over him, its metal limbs swinging with deadly force. Soldiers froze, unsure how to confront it. Ethan assessed the machine, noticing a small panel near its joint. With a precise strike of his sword, he activated the runes embedded in its design. Energy pulsed through the metal, and the machine shuddered before collapsing to the ground. The soldiers gasped. The humans and aliens had never seen such a display of skill. Their morale soared. Princess Elira ran to his side. "You are extraordinary," she said. "I knew you were brave, but this is beyond anything I imagined." Ethan shook his head. "I do what I must. The people, the city, and you. Our survival is more important than pride or glory." The battle continued until the sun began to set. The warlord's first assault had failed, and his forces were scattered. Ethan gathered the generals and soldiers to assess the losses and prepare for the next wave. "The enemy will return stronger," Ethan said. "We cannot fight recklessly. We must anticipate, adapt, and strike intelligently. Victory will come through skill, not brute strength." The generals, now humbled, listened closely. They followed his instructions, setting traps, reinforcing walls, and preparing reserves for the next attack. Even Vaynar approached him privately. "You have proven yourself," the general said quietly. "I misjudged you. You are no commoner. You are a commander, and you have earned our respect." Ethan nodded, acknowledging the words but not seeking praise. His focus remained on the city and its people. As night fell, the soldiers rested, but Ethan remained on the walls, watching the horizon. The twin moons reflected on his sword, and the glow of the runes reminded him of the responsibility he bore. He had once fought for Earth, and now he fought for Zerion. The burden was heavy but necessary. Princess Elira joined him once more. "Do you ever tire of fighting?" she asked. Ethan looked at her, his eyes calm. "I do not fight for war. I fight for life, for those who cannot protect themselves. As long as there is a chance to save people, I will not rest." Elira placed her hand on his shoulder. "Then we will face this together. You lead the army, I will stand with you, and the people will follow. They will see the truth in your actions." Together they watched as the city prepared for the next attack. Fires burned in distant villages, and the horizon glowed with the enemy's lights. The warlord had not yet revealed his full strength. The true test was still to come. Ethan turned to face the soldiers one last time that night. "Rest now," he said. "Tomorrow we fight again. But remember, we fight not as humans or aliens alone. We fight as one people, and together, we are stronger than any enemy." The soldiers nodded, their hearts steady. For the first time, they believed victory was possible. The night was quiet except for the distant hum of enemy machines. Zerion held its breath, waiting for dawn, and when the sun rose, they would face the warlord once more. But now they faced him with a leader who had proven that courage, intelligence, and determination could change the course of any battle. A man they once called a commoner now stood as their commander, and in that moment hope burned brighter than any weapon. The sun rose over the valley of Zerion, painting the battlefield in shades of gold and red. Smoke still drifted from the remains of the first wave, and the city's soldiers prepared for the next attack. The people of Zerion crowded behind the walls, holding their breath. Today the warlord himself would arrive, and the fate of the world would be decided. Ethan stood at the forefront, his sword at his side. His armor gleamed in the morning light, and the glowing runes of his blade reflected the seriousness of the day. Princess Elira stood beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder for support. "They will strike hard," she said softly. "Are you ready?" Ethan nodded. "I have prepared. But this battle will not be won with numbers alone. It will be won by skill, strategy, and courage. Remember, I do not fight for pride. I fight for life. We fight for the people. The ground trembled as a massive shadow appeared on the horizon. Warlord Draxel approached, mounted on a monstrous war machine. His armor gleamed black under the sunlight, and his eyes glowed with a red light that promised destruction. Behind him marched thousands of soldiers and machines, the ground shaking with their advance. General Vaynar and the other commanders prepared their troops, but it was clear they now relied entirely on Ethan's plan. He stepped forward, raising his sword. The runes flared brighter as he lifted it, sending a silent warning to the enemy. The commoner they had mocked was no ordinary man. The warlord's voice boomed across the valley. "Human," he shouted, "you have survived this long. But today your strength ends. Face me or your world falls." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I face you," he replied, stepping onto the open field. The soldiers held their breath, unsure of what might happen next. The duel began. Draxel was massive, his armor near impenetrable, his strength unmatched. He swung a heavy blade toward Ethan, who dodged with speed and precision. Every movement Ethan made was calculated, every step purposeful. He did not strike recklessly, but waited for the perfect moment. The crowd gasped as the two combatants clashed. Sparks flew as blade met blade, the sound echoing across the valley. Draxel was strong, but Ethan was faster, moving with skill honed through years of battle. His sword glowed with energy, slicing through armor, testing gaps, and avoiding brute force. Princess Elira watched, her heart racing. She knew Ethan was skilled, but she had never seen him tested like this. She saw the determination in his eyes, the focus that carried him through every fight he had faced before. Draxel roared and swung again, forcing Ethan to leap aside. The warlord's strength was immense, yet he relied only on power. Ethan used his knowledge of tactics to exploit weaknesses, striking at joints, twisting his body to avoid crushing blows, and using the glowing sword to destabilize the warlord's balance. The soldiers of Zarion watched, inspired by his courage. Many had doubted him once, calling him a farmer, a commoner. Now they saw the truth. This human was a commander, a warrior, and their protector. Ethan pressed forward, circling Draxel, looking for a chance to end the duel. The warlord grew frustrated, swinging wildly, exposing himself with each strike. Ethan noticed a small crack in the warlord's armor near his shoulder joint. He waited for the perfect moment, then leaped forward. With a swift and precise strike, he struck the glowing sword against the armor, activating the rune's hidden power. A pulse of energy traveled through the metal, sending Draxel stumbling backward. His massive blade fell clanging against the ground. The enemy soldiers paused, shocked at the display. Machines wavered, unsure how to respond to such skill and precision. Ethan pressed the advantage, moving quickly, striking at the warlord's weak points with speed that seemed impossible. Draxel roared in anger and tried to retreat, but Ethan's strategy was flawless. He blocked every strike, anticipated every move, and forced the warlord into the center of the field where the soldiers of Zarion waited. The final moment came. Ethan jumped high, spinning in the air, and brought the glowing sword down with all his strength at the warlord's chest plate. The runes flared brightly, and the armor cracked under the energy. Draxel fell to one knee, defeated but alive. The valley was silent for a heartbeat. Then the soldiers of Zarion erupted in cheers. The people screamed in joy. The warlord's remaining forces fled, their morale broken. Victory had been won. Princess Elira ran forward, wrapping her arms around Ethan. "You did it," she said, tears of relief and pride in her eyes. "You saved us all." Ethan lowered the sword, breathing heavily but calm. "This is only the beginning," he said. "We must rebuild and protect our people, but today Zarion stands." The generals approached, their faces filled with respect. Even General Vaynar bowed before him. "Human, I misjudged you," he said. "You are no commoner. You are a hero and a commander. Your skill and wisdom saved us all." Ethan nodded. "I did what I had to do. The people, the city, and the princess were more important than pride or titles." The queen rose from her throne, her expression proud. "Let it be known throughout Zarion, Ethan of Earth, the human who wielded the sword, has proven himself a protector of this world. He is honored by the crown, the army, and the people." The crowd erupted in cheers once more. Flags waved, trumpets sounded, and for the first time in weeks the city felt safe. Ethan sheathed his sword, feeling the weight of his actions. He had fought countless battles in his life, but this one was different. This was not a war for glory or conquest. This was a war to save lives, to protect a people who had accepted him despite his differences. Princess Elira held his hand tightly. "You are the bravest man I have ever known," she said softly. "I knew there was more to you than met the eye, but I could not imagine this." Ethan looked at her, a small smile forming. "I only did what was necessary. You and your people gave me purpose. That is what matters." The city celebrated late into the night. Fires burned in honor, music filled the streets, and the people sang songs of the human who had saved Zerion. Children ran with wooden swords pretending to be Ethan, and soldiers recounted his actions to anyone who would listen. Yet Ethan remained humble. He did not seek the praise or the applause. He walked beside Elira, looking over the city he had saved, feeling a quiet satisfaction that came from knowing he had protected life. In the following days, the remains of the warlord's forces were driven from the planet. The soldiers rebuilt the walls, repaired the damage, and restored order. The people of Zerion now looked at Ethan not as a stranger, but as a hero and a leader. The court that had mocked him now bowed in respect. Nobles who had laughed at his presence offered apologies and sought guidance from the human who had proved that courage, intelligence, and determination could overcome even the greatest challenges. Princess Elira stood beside Ethan in the palace courtyard. "You have changed everything," she said. "The people respect you, the army follows you, and even the generals have learned to trust your judgment. You are no commoner, Ethan. You are more than anyone could have imagined." Ethan smiled faintly. "I did not fight for respect. I fought for life. The people's trust is a gift, not a right. I will continue to protect them, but I do not need to be a hero in name." The queen approached, her eyes soft but strong. "You have proven yourself worthy of this world, Ethan. You are a protector, a commander, and now a part of our people. Zerion owes you more than words can say." Ethan bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only wish to continue serving and protecting." As the sun set on Zerion, the city glowed in triumph. The twin moons rose above the palace, reflecting off the crystal towers. People danced in the streets, and the soldiers who had once doubted him now carried his name with pride. Ethan stood beside Princess Elira, looking over the city they had saved together. For the first time in many years, he felt true peace. He had fought, he had led, and he had proven that even a human, seen as a commoner, could change the course of a world. And in the quiet of the night, as the city celebrated, Ethan knew one truth above all: courage, wisdom, and heart mattered more than titles, wealth, or strength alone. That truth had saved Zerion, and it would guide the city for generations to come.